Well, hello and welcome to this special preview of the world's greatest greyhound race. We're of course talking about the Star Sports English Greyhound Derby, which kicks off in the first week of May here at Towcester Racecourse. Now we're in Lord Hesketh's box here, and our panel this morning is on your left, their greyhound frontman. He's the man from Star Sports. He's the big fella. His name is Martin Chapman, otherwise known, unsurprisingly, as Lofty. Another very tall chap. We talk about the world's greatest greyhound race. Well, let's have one of the world's greatest trainers, shall we? Well, we couldn't, but we got Kevin Hutton. Sorry, Kevin. You're absolutely top notch, we know that. And of course, in terms of the Irish interest, and there's always plenty of that when it comes to the Greyhound Derby, we've got leading Irish journalist and Shelbourne commentator extraordinaire, Mr. Ian Fortune. Welcome to you all, but especially to Ian, who's made the trip via Heathrow. Now, in this first section, we're going to look at the leading English contenders. And I suppose we've got to really start, we'll come to Kevin's team imminently, but I suppose we've really got to start, Martin, with Droopy's Verve. You know, pretty much in terms of the trial stakes, just last weekend, has set those alight. Once again, this time out of trap 5, he's blasted out and he's made all.
So he certainly did, yeah. You say he was, we were 33 to 1 the field prior to the trial stakes. It looked a real wide open race. Never seen a derby like that, so open with like 2 or 3 weeks to go. So he's finally got himself at the head of the market of all the English trained dogs. Certainly, it was very impressive. Pinged out. That was a flashy good time for a pup on only, you say, second look round Towcester. He did exactly the right thing. Rising Brandy put him away in the puppy derby at Monmore, which come to show how good the form of his Rising Brandy. We'll come on to him later on. But Droopy's Verve did absolutely nothing wrong the other night. He was sort of the dark dog really during the course of the thing. The big dog for him is going to be Droopy's Expert, who's been very quiet. I've not seen an awful lot of him. But he made his debut, I remember, on the night when Droopy's Expert beat Droopy's Buick last year at Newcastle. And yeah, he's been certainly the one to come there. He's taken to the track really well. Unlike Buick last year, he didn't really take to the track. His class got him alone to the quarterfinals, semi-finals that he made last year. And yeah, he's certainly the one so far of the English dogs. He's the one who's impressed. They're the ones who've not been round there, and he's got to be a contender. He starts and stays. It's what you want round Towcester.
I think on that occasion, certainly in that last trial stakes, he put Bruiser's Bullet very much in the shade, which, I mean, was that some sort of surprise, Ian? I think if you've caught the race, I mean, Bruiser's Bullet, of course, a greyhound who's the Olympic champion the back end of last year. Remember what he did to King Turbo down the back straight there. So maybe that was something of a surprise, or is Droopy's Verve just top notch?
Droopy's Verve is clearly a very bright prospect. We haven't seen him behind in Towcester, which is a big thing. It's a different track from behind than it is from the front. But the way he's trapping, if he keeps that consistency, he'll be very much a leading contender at the latter stages of the Derby. Bruiser's Bullet, he's probably a dog where he's had a serious injury in his time. Things are probably happening that bit quicker for him than they would have in the past. But in terms of a Derby dog, he's probably a dog that'll keep qualifying. The resilience will be there with him, and I'd have no fear with him the 3 runs in the latter stages in that week. Whereas some of these younger dogs, you'd have to be concerned. Bruiser's Bullet, I wouldn't expect any flashy runs from him in the first 2 or 3 rounds. It's in the latter stages of the Derby, if he gets that far, that he'll probably come into his own, his strength and his resilience. But yeah, I think Verve is very much one of the leading fancies from England as far as we're concerned, on our side of the pond.
And I think you make a great point. I always remember Mark Wallace saying that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. You gradually bring the greyhounds to the fore. So I'm going to come to you, Kevin, in terms of your major players, Dorota's Wildcat and Magical Bale. They have had the Star Sports 2018 English Derby very much at the top of their agenda, well, for a long time now.
They certainly have, yes. I mean, Wildcat took his chance last year as a very inexperienced dog, and that cost him. You know, he got trouble out the second bend in the second round, and that was it. But I think this year he's a much more hardened, seasoned dog. He's an absolute pro now. He can take a bad draw, you know, which you're obviously going to get during the Derby, and he's just a much more well-rounded dog. So, very hopeful that Wildcat can go very well in this year's competition. Magical Bale, I think he's as good as anything we've ever had, but he might just lack the little bit of experience. You know, he has only had 5 races. It's easy to forget. You know, first race of his life was a puppy derby, which he went on and won in brilliant style. So no doubt about his class. Just might lack the experience this year.
And in terms of draw, very quickly, we know that Wildcat, still think he's desperate for those rails. What about Magical Bale?
Yeah, Wildcat desperate for the rails. Magical Bale, not so much. I wouldn't be concerned at all if he drew 3-4. He'll stay straight to the bend, I think, and he seems very versatile. But Wildcat, he's had some shocking draws of late, but hopefully it can turn around and we can get some kind draws. And he's as good as anything on his day.
I suppose that's the beauty of the derby. If we could guarantee trap 1 for Dorota's Wildcat
Well,
for 6 rounds.
You look back at last year's final, let's say if Clare's Rocket had been in trap 1, he'd have been a 2s-on chance. As it was, he was drifting tonight because everyone and their mother knew that as soon as the traps opened, if he didn't take a ping, he was going to get trouble, and so it happens. And
I think doing a draw
that's
last
the look
year,
of the draw.
Doing a draw last year, I got plenty of stick for drawing that Wildcat in trap 4. And when he drew trap 4 in the Irish derby, I remember Kev going to me, "You didn't do a draw, did you?" I was like, "That wasn't me, honestly." But so going back to Wildcat, he does get cribs, saying the dog's draw dependent. He's only ever won 2 invitation races and not won a cat one, but he's the quickest dog in the country in my eyes for actually, pure speed. He does need things to go his own way, admittedly, but I still think he's a very, very fast dog.
When his paws touch the sand, at that moment into the bend, as you say, there's not.
His pace from 2 to 3 is ridiculously
Yeah.
fast. He's a really quick dog. And I've had him last year to win an absolute fortune. I'll be on a desert island, not sitting here doing this now. If he'd won derby last year, I think Dave Clark might have been with me, the fresh colleague. But yeah, he's certainly a very quick
It brings you back to the question: would you prefer consistency or brilliance? There's no question the Wildcat has the brilliance. But we've seen just glimpses of, even just as a raw novice last year in the early round of the derby, it was so catching to the eye, but just the consistency wasn't there. But as Kevin said, it's just he's now a more seasoned, hardened dog, and it's all well and good saying he's probably draw dependent, but he can start, and if he can start, it doesn't matter where you're boxed. Especially a dog with his pace, as you say, when he hits the ground, he's going to get racing into the corner. And as far as I can see, there's not too much on this side of the pond that can handle him when he's on his game. So he'd have to be in the top 2 or 3.
Okay, now I'm an old romantic. I'd love the idea of one greyhound to win the Triple Crown, which of course is the Scottish and the English and the Irish derbies. Now, there's only one greyhound that can do that this year, so what do we think of the other reg in terms of his Shawfield performance and his performances here last year?
That was impressive, the Shawfield run. The good thing with the other reg, he does run a really, really good bend, which I think is an important thing around Towcester, with staying around wide around the outside as well. You watch that Scottish derby, that was definitely the strong point of it. Shawfield's a tough track to run. You saw what King Turbo done in the first round without a look round. He was off into off into the Gorbal somewhere around the first bend there at Shawfield. You've got to have a look round that track. And yeah, I mean, he lacks the harder middle pace to me, but he's a cracking good bend runner, and he'll certainly improve from last year. He would definitely be at one of the bigger prices. I think he's about a 50-1 chance we saw this morning. I wouldn't rule him out at all. Sort of don't go a lot deeper than we did last year.
Okay, I'll come to you, Kevin, for King Elvis. I mean, he's Greyhound of the Year. You've got Dorota's Wildcat, who I just think is a phenomenally fast greyhound. I actually think King Elvis is also that when it comes to the times to the third bend here at Towcester. He's up there with the very best. Yes, he was beaten in the Gold Cup, but King Elvis again, better conditions, faster going. He'd have to be a player.
He definitely would be a player. Yeah, he's got sizzling early pace. He seems to have got his breaking together. He flashes out more often than not. Like you say, to the second to third, I think he's as fast as anything out there. It's just whether if he could cheat a bad draw, if he got some early pace up inside of him, I think he'd be quite vulnerable. He's certainly not going to be strong over the 500-metre trip. So maybe a dog that could do a flashy run or two early, but then I think as the competition goes on, I think he might struggle a bit, to be honest. But a wicked fast dog on his day,
especially seeded middle.
Yeah, good point. Right, a couple of others we really should be mentioned. We talk about Angela Harrison's team principally with Droopy's Verve, but I was delighted to hear that Droopy's Expert could be on the comeback trail as well. And I know he suffered an injury. We thought he perhaps would miss the derby, but again, go back to All England Cup form as a youngster, top notch.
Yeah, winter favourite all the way through. But you say interactive preparation, and it seems like Droopy's Verve's the one of choice now from the Harrison camp, but. It'd be nice to see him here as well, to see a double stronger thing. Need it with the English Challenge this year. It looks fairly, it's like average, but it looks wide open, the English Challenge, certainly.
Bubbly Bluebird?
No.
You have to wait and see how he comes back. Obviously his form this year hasn't been good enough, and had his chance last year and it didn't happen for him, but who knows. But no, there'll be others I'd prefer. In terms of the Droopy's Expert, Droopy's Verve, I'd be very much in Verve rather than Expert. I think Expert very much a bunny dog. I think he needs to be on the bunny, and I think especially in the early rounds, there'd be nights where there'd be dogs up his inside and he just could find himself in a spot of trouble. And 500 metres here now will test him, I think.
Okay. I want to talk Matt Dartnall with you, Martin, and of course it's his father Terry, very much the scourge of the bookmakers for many, many years. I've kind of noticed that Matt has a very, very strong team of greyhounds at the moment. They're winning races, and we talk about Droopy's Verve, we talk about that Puppy Derby performance, and Rising Brandy was the one that won that competition. You know, have you had plenty of support for Rising Brandy?
So Jason, who's our trader in the office, is a big fan of this dog. He's bet it at 100 to 1, so you can say goodbye to that account when he's coming into the Derby. But listen, you don't often see dogs, and the performance makes you go, wow, and you sit up and sort of take notice. The Keefy dog in the Puppy Derby at Romford, Roxanne Nignet done that flashy time. You looked at it that night and thought, what a run. Same with Rising Brandy, that race at Monmouth when it beat Droopy's Verve, you know, it looked a real proper dog, didn't break stride once, had everything early, ran the bend superbly, stayed on strongly. On that run alone, you think, well, this is probably one of the best dogs you've seen for a long time, you know, for a youngster. But again, he lacks a hell of a lot of experience. He's only ever had, you know, two or three qualifying trials around here, the 2 trials over the 500 round. We've done exactly the same time both times. The first was off a very, very fast section. Was ready to a 508 or 509 section the first time. You know, he's obviously clearly a very, very fast dog, but it's a lot of big ask in the Derby for a dog who's only had a handful of runs in one competition.
And Ian, one greyhound that we haven't mentioned, Droopy's Benucci. Is he a morning glory dog? He does incredibly fast trial times, it seems, but comes unstuck in races, or is that unfair?
To be honest, he had a strange enough campaign last year. He hit a lot of tracks. He was a dog that sort of fell off my radar. I sort of saw him in the prices and went, God, is that dog still around? You know, he needs to produce his best form. But if he does, there's no question he was one of the most exciting dogs in England last year. And if the penny drops, and it could still drop, he just could be a dog that could surprise a few. You know, even though he's prominent in the betting, he's a dog that a lot of people have forgotten about.
Right. They may have forgotten, but he's certainly got huge talent, hasn't he? He's Droopy's Benucci. He's one of the leading English contenders for the Star Sports English Greyhound Derby.